Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's Tuesday, May 3rd edition. It's politics conversation today. And I'll tell you what, Robb Ryerse, a lot to chat about today.
Has anything happened in the world, Doug?
Boy, you just think, boy, if we couldn't, wouldn't it be great to live in times that had great moral and social consequence? So we didn't feel like we were just wasting our time on this earth. Well, we've got it. I'm just outside of Minneapolis. Standing up today, by the way. It's been a long time since I've stood up during the podcast and live stream. I've just resorted to sitting down. It got easy, and I got a little set up, and I didn't want to change it. And I decided, our motto around Vote Common Good is wake up, speak up, stand up. And it's time to stand up. So standing up today. Rob, we're going to talk about Roe Vs Wade decision that looks like it's coming because of some leaked information from the Supreme Court, which is its own intrigue. We're going to talk about, of course, the fact that in Georgia, they have impaneled a grand jury to investigate the criminality of the former president of the United States. It's not enough that he's twice impeached, couldn't get himself reelected, and is just a miserable politician and, executive of the executive branch. But now he's facing some indictment.
And not a good dancer. And not a good dancer either.
I didn't know that. Is that a thing? Is this a new critique on the front?
I think we need to add that to the list. I mean, I saw a fresh video of one of his rallies and he was dancing, and I'm just reminded of the fact that he's just not a good dancer. He does that little thing that he does. And,
sure does. But, I will say, as much as I'm opposed to Donald Trump, what he has done, the fact that he comes at those, does rallies, first of all, and they dance, and we've been to them, you and I together, and I've been to other Donald Trump events. There is a party atmosphere before it gets boring once he starts talking, but they do really create a party atmosphere. And it's part of the ethos of what makes some of the stuff feel so uniquely bizarre and weird and dangerous, that there's these huge social changes, like maybe it's going to be happening with the Supreme Court's ruling on Roe versus Wade and voting rights and healthcare and a whole lot of other things and legislation that's struggling. And then in the midst of it, you get this sort of strange, afternoon boat cruise vibe of the Trump administration and what they do, like a few years ago, there was a story about the Minnesota Vikings having a boat cruise, and they all got drunk on the boat cruise and had a bunch of people on it and turned into a little, sexual escapades and all. That's kind of what those Trump events feel like, the people at sort of a motocross and all-star wrestling or WWF wrestling mixed with politics, and people can't really separate the one from the other. And I don't know, find it quite disturbing myself.
Yeah. And people are voting today too, Doug. It's primary day in Ohio, and I think also in Indiana. And we're headed into that time in the month of May where lots of big decisions are going to be taking place, and there's some big races, particularly in Ohio today.
Yeah, governor in Ohio, Senate primary, and at least on the Republican side. I'm guessing there is on the
Democratic side too
as well. And that's we're entering into now the primary season. If you don't follow the calendar of politics so much, sometimes I feel like we are to politics what sports talk radio is to sports, where you have to explain to people, hey, we have a draft coming up, or spring training is about to start, or we're reaching a point at which you can't trade a player anymore. You're like all the ins and outs.
Which, and just as a side note,
yes,
I can't believe how many hours of the NFL draft I watched this weekend. A lot of them.
Many.
My team didn't even have a pick in the first round and traded their pick in the second round. And I watched for hours and hours and hours.
Is that so?
Anyways, yes.
And were you generally happy with those choices?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm in a tough spot with my team right now because they have signed they traded for and signed a new star quarterback who has been accused of sexual assault by 22 women. And yeah, I don't want to talk about it. So I interrupted you. Yes.
Which
Yes. So
we
it's
haven't.
primary season. We are helping people understand the calendar and where we're at.
Yeah, there's an important calendar that faces our political endeavors, and we're going to be seeing a number of primaries over the next. I would imagine most weeks on our Tuesday conversations here on the Common Good podcast, seeking some common good politics. We're going to be running into this. Hey, there's an important primary today. Ohio, the answer to the riddle, what's round in the middle and tall on the sides, is the first one, and it's got some great consequence to it because of who's running. So we'll get to that here in a bit, and we'll talk about what's happening in Ohio. But let's talk a little bit about this leaked document of the deliberations in the first draft of the Supreme Court's ruling on this Mississippi case, in which, by all indications, it looks like the conservatives are going to win the day. The five of them, and that they're going to, if the write-up that has come out now ends up being, in essence, what the ruling of the Supreme Court is, not just an adaptation of the number of when an abortion can take place, but a full-throated rejection of the notion that a person has the right to an abortion at all, that it's not found in the Constitution and therefore needs to be determined by lawmakers and not by the courts, that it's not a courts issue at all. At least that's my understanding. I've only was able to read little bits of it and the things that I've heard, but that's the argument. It's been the argument that a lot of conservatives have wanted for a very long time. And it looks like that's going to be the situation.
Yeah. It's very interesting. The conservative argument about abortion has been one related to states' rights and allowing the individual states to make this decision for the people in their states, and kind of removing it from a federal issue. What this draft opinion says is it doesn't mean it, at least in the sections that I've read. I haven't read the whole. I think it's I can't remember how many pages it is. I haven't read the whole thing,
Yeah,
but I've read some
80 some pages.
Yeah,
with a bunch of
I've read some excerpts, and I have not seen any reference to states in particular. There are multiple references to leaving it to the people and their elected representatives to make the decision. Now, that certainly could be on the state level, but it also leaves open there being some, federal response to this situation that would once again provide a national policy or a national standard on protecting women's reproductive rights. Where we're at right now is that it's going to as soon as this opinion is actually handed down. I've seen varying reports, anywhere from 13 to 22 states, depending on. I think there's 13 states that have passed restrictive abortion laws that have a trigger in them that if the Supreme Court overturns Roe, they will immediately go into effect.
Right.
And I happen to live in one of those states. Every state bordering the state that I live in has passed those laws. So it feels very much like we are in the dead center of that. And any woman needing this healthcare procedure is going to find it very, very difficult to be able to do it. It's not like you can just, drive north to Missouri and get it there, because they have passed the same laws. So what we're going to see is immediately, like, it's not like, okay, well, they're passing this, and then we'll have, some fights, some in state legislative races to see what states are going to do. No, this will immediately impact
Yeah.
people's rights to reproductive care.
Yeah, and look, Kelly Russell in the chat makes a good point that you're right. I think it's a dozen or 13 states have these trigger laws that have been newly been written in the last 30, 40 years that say if Roe versus Wade is overturned, this becomes the law of the land. They don't have to vote on it again. It's set to go. Another set of states, about that many, 12 or 13, have restrictive laws from before Roe versus Wade, so from the 50s and 60s, that are some go all the way back to the 30s, that are still on the books. I think Michigan is this way. And those laws then will revert to being the laws in place. Now, that's going to mean that the decisions about access to abortion and when it can take place, whether has a medical exception for no abortion or if there's a number of weeks, it's going to be a hodgepodge of rules that are now going to have to be negotiated out at the state law level. Look, a couple things about all this. Most state legislators are not wanting to, nor are they capable of dealing with such grand moral issues that make their state independent from the other states. So what they're going to do is to borrow those laws from other states. Mm-hmm. So for all the arguments that states need to make their own decisions and states have to have their own laws on this, we know how laws get made from state to state, that there's organizations that help put together draft laws. They pass them. They copy and paste and change them to fit, what the demands are of a particular location. That's what's going to happen. So you're not, to the degree that, yes, the conservatives who want this to be a states' rights issue, the verdict, the ruling, the law is going to end up coming down from a different place in that state. But it's not as if the voters' will is what's being invoked here. In fact, 70% of the U.S. population, I'm sure it changes by region, want Roe versus Wade to stay where it is.
Yeah.
But okay, here's the other political thought that I have on this. We've been traveling the country trying to say to people that our immigration laws are wrong-headed, are immoral, are counterproductive, and need to change. And one of our arguments is laws don't just exist. Laws that keep people in Mexico, laws that say to asylum seekers, you have to get on U.S. soil, laws that put a limit on the number of people from any one country that can receive a visa. These aren't laws of the universe. These are rules that we've made up. And if we made the laws, we can change the laws. That's a part of the American fabric. Yeah. And we have to support the laws that exist until we can change them. That's part of the American fabric. The difficulty that we have in this moment is, for a lot of us, we feel like this law goes the wrong way, but it's ruled on by the United States Supreme Court, the same court that put Roe versus Wade into place. Mm-hmm. And those justices were all put on the Supreme Court in a legitimate way. And the president who appointed them was the duly elected president of the United States. Like, all the rules have been followed. That's how we've gotten to this situation. And when people do the thing like, well, Merrick Garland should have been on there, and somebody like, look, the rules exist for how a Supreme Court justice gets on the Supreme Court. And the people who make those rules are the Senate and the administration, and they follow them, whether people like them or think someone skirted around or should have fulfilled something else. We have a whole system to adjudicate that in this country. These are our laws. And now the thing that becomes difficult for a lot of us is that on this issue, we now have to work to change this law. I actually believe we might be in better situation to deal with this legislatively than to deal with it judicially. And this has been one of the arguments all along with the way abortion has been legalized in this country, was to root it to the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And a lot of people, even people very supportive of a woman's right to choose, have said that's a dubious way to get there. Like
Yeah.
you kind of hodgepodge together the arguments. Why don't we do this at the legislative level? And people who've supported a woman's right to choose to terminate her pregnancy before a certain date have not wanted to move it to a legislative answer. So now that's the work that's going to have to be done. That means, as we've talked about before on this podcast, state races and congressional races and Senate races are going to be even more about abortion than ever before. So it's going to make this a deeper political issue. One more thought, and I'd love to hear yours. It's going to make it even a deeper political issue for a country that doesn't know how to talk about abortion. Just ask yourself the question, any listeners and viewers. When was the last time you had a robust conversation about abortion? Do you even know what the abortion laws in your own state are? Do you even know the circumstances of people who have abortions? Most of us don't have any concept of that. We don't know, and we don't know the moral implications, and we don't know the arguments of people who disagree with us. Instead, we're a country that's conflicted and is separated on this issue, but we don't understand one another. This, I hope, forces us into deeper legislative work and into deeper understanding.
Yeah.
We're going to replay a conversation we had just over a year ago with two people, Elizabeth Krause and Ashley Abercrombie, and asking them to come back on, both who talk about their own experience with abortion as women and women of Christian faith, and what led them to have abortions and how they're thinking about it and how their thinking has developed in their own lives around this issue. And for a lot of people who've listened to, we did those a year ago, and we're going to have them back on the podcast hopefully soon to give us sort of an update on this. But a lot of people who've listened to those have said to me, you know, that's the first like full conversation I've heard people even talk about this. I just don't even know the context in which this is happening. So my hope is that we can end up with greater liberty for women, not less, which it feels like right now this is moving in the opposite direction. But ultimately, that we end up in a different place around the issues of abortion politically and socially, and that people feel more engaged and more informed about these issues than they do currently. You know, the opening to this ruling is Americans are deeply conflicted around the issue of abortion. Yeah, they sure are. And is this going to make it worse? In my estimation, it most certainly is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, Doug, you make an excellent point that, you know, tying this reproductive freedom to the 14th Amendment is a dubious one. And in this draft opinion, Justice Alito, who, let me just say, this guy's a real piece of work. The use of the word abortionists in this opinion is just this guy. So in his opinion, he says that there is no mention of abortion in the Constitution, and so therefore it should not be, you know, in the courts, and as a result, you know, things are, you know, the court's decision in Roe was misguided, and it needs to be tackled legislatively. They're okay that if that's the playing field we're going to play on, okay. The deeply disconcerting thing is how many other things have been decided by the court and not by the legislature. Marriage equality, that was a court decision. That was not legislated. You know, I think the last time that you know, the U.S. Congress you know, got involved in that decision in that issue is the Defense of Marriage Act during the Clinton administration. You know, so civil rights, those have been court decisions. You know, we have difficulty passing, you know, voter rights, voter protection bills. You know, so this just throws like this, like if you begin to pull at this thread, there are so many things that have been decided by the court that now there is precedent for, you know, the court to throw out all sorts of things that aren't literally mentioned in the Constitution.
Yeah, boy,
And it's,
that's exactly it. Yep.
yeah.
And look, we realize in moments like this that our system of a judicial branch and a legislative branch that need to deal with these kinds of social issues are not always equipped to deal with them very well. We don't have in our human design system an answer for everything. We live in a world in which what we're going to do about the issue of abortion and about a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy or not is something that neither our laws nor our interpretation of the Constitution are the simple solution for that problem.
Yeah.
How we think about it and what we do about it. So we come up with workarounds the best we can. The argument for people who are, maybe yelling at their computer or their phone right now, saying this guy doesn't understand how, Roe versus Wade has been argued, and that in the Casey case, it's actually a legitimate argument for a woman's right to choose to have an abortion based on the Constitution. And the Supreme Court was right to have ruled the way that it did. Yeah, that's a workaround. And we can all say, yeah, there's an argument to be made that there's a liberty right that's in the Constitution and you can apply that, but it's not a perfect fit. It's odd fitting. There's gaps, there's holes. It's like constructing a house and you have to use a whole bunch of that, fill the gap spray stuff that you put around windows and doors because it's not custom made. Yeah. So we have a lot of gaps and a lot of things don't work. And it's in those gaps where the pressure really starts to build. Yeah. So Alito's argument is one that is the solution that he has brought is going to create a whole other set of problems. Yeah. It's like spraying that gap fill stuff inside of your door jamb. And if you put too much of it in there, it starts to crack the door jamb. He's going to crack something open here. I guess I mixed my metaphor there. He's going to crack something here that is now going to open up a whole lot of other issues that have to be dealt with. So
for sure.
Look,
I think let's talk about some of the political implications of this, because I think that's important. Doug, I don't think I've said this publicly on the podcast, but you and I have been in meetings over the last year where we have talked about the midterm elections, and we have tried to talk ourselves off the ledge of what looks like would be a Republican, a significant Republican win in the House of Representatives, and in likely a Republican win in the Senate, and what we could do to avoid that, and how do we work to keep that from happening. And Doug, you have heard me say that I think that the only thing that would save us from a significant Republican win in November would be if Roe was overturned. I think that the political backlash to this is something that the religious right is going to underestimate, and has underestimated. They think that they have the majority on this. They think that they have, the temperature of the American people on this, and they are absolutely wrong. This is unprecedented in a number of ways. The Supreme Court has never stripped people of their rights. Now, I mean, that's not to say the Supreme Court's never made bad decisions, because they have, but they've never taken away rights that already existed, that had already been granted. And so, this is going to cause a significant backlash. There's already a majority of Americans, a significant majority of Americans, who support a woman's right to choose. Now, those voters are going to be energized and mobilized. Listen, let's just be honest. The Biden administration has done a lot of good for the country. But man, they have struggled in connecting with the American people over the last 2 years, and really have left many of their voters uninspired, unenthusiastic, lethargic, without a reason to go to the polls and
I mean,
like
millions of people
Sleepy
haven't even
Joe.
gotten out of beds in the morning. Yeah, bed in the morning. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Just following
Ridiculous.
Sleepy Joe. So this is listen, this is I did not want this decision to be made, but this decision will
Mhm.
galvanize and energize
I hear what you're saying.
millions and millions of voters who would not have been otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think it is the very thing that might save a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. So I think that this could turn out to be a the backlash of
Yeah.
the kind of oh shoot moment that lots of people have. And white suburban women moved from Trump to Biden in 2020, and those white suburban women were voters who were very likely to go quote unquote return home and vote Republican in the midterms. I think this changes that, and we're going to see Democrats hold white suburban women, and that's going to allow them to be much more competitive in control in remaining in control of the House and the Senate.
Well, I think that's a smart political analysis, and you very well may be right. The issue that doesn't seem to line up to give me the greatest confidence. I mean, I've been one that has suggested that I think Democrats really do have a chance to hold the House and hold the Senate. But the issue here is not, we don't do general population elections.
Yes.
There's, pick your number, 20, 15, 25, somewhere in that ballpark of congressional districts that are going to be up for grabs, that are going to determine the control of the House. Some people might say 40, but it's going to be, I think, somewhere in the 15 to 20 to 25. So the question is, does this issue motivate the people who live inside of those districts?
Mm-hmm.
I'm less confident. I think the places where those districts are up for grabs, this issue might not be as motivating. Do I think that the bluer areas of our country, the places that vote for Democrats more often, are going to be even more voting for Democrats? Or when someone votes, they're going to vote pushing harder on that button or, marking that box? Yeah, for sure. But that's the difference is, does this happen in the votes for the House of Representatives in the districts that's going to move the needle there? Yeah. I do think it has more impact on the Senate, though, because Senate is a statewide race. And so therefore you can get these blue pockets in certain Senate. And that might be the thing that's really needed. Yeah. As somebody who wanted there to be Democratic control of Congress because Republicans have given up their right to rule in this country and doubled down on their right to, before the 2020 election, and doubled down on that with their behavior after the insurrection. So I think that they need to sit it out for a very long period of time until they let this fever pass. But the idea that Georgia flipped and that Democrats got control of the Senate in that January special election, January 2021, unbelievable. So all of a sudden, Democrats were like, hey, we don't have a split government, which is what people thought was going to happen in 2020. It's like, no, Democrats have control of the Senate. Now, can they add to it? I think that was up for grabs. I think they could have lost control of the Senate. I think you're right that maybe they will gain control of the Senate. And it could be that Democrats gain seats in the Senate and lose seats in the House because of how and it's not gerrymandering that does this. I mean, you may argue that it is, but gerrymandering is not the problem that simply needs to be solved. The problem that needs to be solved is the influence of small money. But the thing that really has to happen is that people have to move at the right congressional levels along with the state level. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I do think there's places where this could happen. Now, what's hard about it is to talk about this now is like talking about gun legislation after a murder. Yes. A mass shooting murder. Like it's hard to pivot to that conversation and deal with the implication of this potential ruling. Now, what I think is also politically interesting is someone leaked this document, and the people I've heard are saying it's unprecedented in modern Supreme Court history. So someone thinks if we can get this into the public conversation before the ruling has come down, maybe that can influence the actual ruling. I think that's what's going on. Someone didn't just break this as a news story. They put this into the public conversation in order, on my belief, to try to influence the conversation. And it will be interesting to see if that happens. Like if they start showing other drafts of the ultimate order that comes down, and someone can show, this was in February, the one that we saw, and then they made some other changes in March, and there were some other changes in early April, and then what's happened between May 2nd, the evening of May 2nd, and whenever the ruling comes down becomes another piece. So there's a big political, not political in who you vote for, but how does the body politic speak to the Supreme Court in a way that the Supreme Court might actually hear that and have some implication for it.
Yeah. So when you watch a television show, you're watching a sitcom typically or even a drama, there are A stories and B stories, right?
Oh, sure.
You're watching a 20-minute, show. There's a primary story about, two of the characters interacting. And then there's like a sub story with another character and their interactions in some way. And a good television show has an A story, a B story, maybe even a C story. And you're tracking multiple stories at once. What we've seen with this is in mainstream media, a phrase that I hate, democratic friendly media, the A story is the A story. And that is that the Supreme Court is on the verge of overturning Roe v. Wade. That's the A story. You turn on Fox News or you visit foxnews.com like I did this morning, or any host of right-wing media. The B story is the main story to them.
Which is the leaking.
The leak is a story. It is an important story. It is a part of the conversation. It needs to be, but it's not the main thing. It's not the egregious thing here. It is not the, it is historic and unprecedented, but it is not the the unprecedented aspect of this with the widest implications for most Americans. It's the inside baseball, the talking head journalists in Washington, D.C., the Beltway class, their chatter about, the House of Cards way of all of this working, like that. It's the B story. And, and so I just, it's important to talk about. But it is less, which I'm really glad we spent, a full, 30 minutes or more talking about the A story.
Yeah, that's right.
But let's be sure that we know which is which.
But like a Seinfeld episode, the one, about Festivus, that's one of the great Seinfeld episodes ever. That tells the story, of the Festivus holiday. That was a B story in the Seinfeld show, but it's the one that stuck and it's the one that lasted. Here's why I think the conservative news media is using, and I think that's a beautiful illustration or metaphor of the B story. Here's why they're focused on the B story. They also recognize that this was leaked in order to move opinion of the Supreme Court. Yeah, especially John Roberts. That John Roberts could be trying to get to some of these others to say, let's soften this language. Let's not do what the opening line or the opening statement from Alito is, that Roe versus Wade needs to be overruled. That maybe this is now going to ratchet up the political pressure. So the reason that the conservatives are on is because they're like, we had a win in our hands. And then and now they're going to start claiming dirty tricks and cheating and all the stuff, that people on both sides do. They're going to start saying, well, the Supreme Court's ruling was muddled by public opinion because this leak happen, and someone will probably try to suggest that it's illegal. That some kind of leak happened, and that's now what's going to cause. So if they don't end up with a ruling that matches this draft, they're going to try to say it was falsely influenced. So they are going to make this the main story for part of the population on why did the Supreme Court not go far enough. So they don't have to blame the Supreme Court justices. They can blame the media, and they can blame the radicals in public opinion formation in the country. That's the other thing that's going on. And I think you're, so what we might ultimately end up, remembering about all of this is truly the palace intrigue that went on with how was this done? Because the Supreme Court, for all of its respectability, has a very overblown sense of itself, and these justices do. And the fact that what they do is to create rulings and then attach justices' names to them. So you don't just get a ruling. This was written by Justice Alito, and he flourishes it in his own way, and then a dissent comes in another way, and they're these giants of the judicial, Godhead have told us, in their own powerful, and just all this nonsense. Like, that's not what the Supreme Court should be doing. So all the theater that goes into all of this, with the way that the assistants and the aides to the Supreme Court justices and their clerks are writing up all of these paragraphs, and they're being, finally edited like someone's writing a great memoir. All this stuff that goes on in the Supreme Court that pits character with character, and we know these people. Look, whether you're a huge fan of Alito or you're a huge fan of Kagan or
anybody.
RBG. Yeah, for sure they are. Yeah. I mean, they make little action dolls and figures out of these people. And that's the part of all of this that makes it the A story for so many people. But I think that's a great metaphor and analogy. All right. Can we just shift our minds to
that being said, yes. Let's talk about something else.
No,
but
I love a phrase that always starts with that being said.
John Roberts is the one who leaked it. Sure of it.
Okay. Oh boy. All right. So, C story.
Someday the story will be told.
Who leaked it?
Yeah, it was John Roberts.
A clerk for sure. All right. I'm going to do something fancy and change my lighting for this. Look at that. Look at what I just did. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Trump being indicted in Georgia. A special grand jury was picked in Georgia to probe Trump's actions in the 2020 Georgia election, is what the Associated Press ruled or headlined on yesterday. This is a big deal. That phone call, other phone calls that we haven't all heard of what Trump was doing to try to influence the certification of the election in Georgia, approaches criminality, and a grand jury is going to determine whether a prosecutor has enough evidence that a crime was committed to press charges. This is a big story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I mean, this is the kind of thing that has lasting consequence. This feels like when Bill Clinton was ordered to appear in a deposition under oath, and the consequences that came from that.
Yep.
That however this goes, if Donald Trump is put under oath and has to say things because there's official government proceedings about criminality, that is a game changer in a serious way. So for all the other things that we worry about, and all the ways that, I have been arguing for 4 years, a president of the United States is not going to be perp walked and put in a orange jumpsuit and have a mugshot taken in this country. It's just simply not going to happen. But could there be some implications around this that do have severe personal consequences for Donald Trump, and certainly political consequences? It sure seems like it could.
Yeah. We talk about, unprecedented. A former president of the United States has had a grand jury impaneled to look at their actions, look at his actions, and decide on whether or not there is enough evidence to indict him. There's kind of this old cliche that any lawyer, any prosecutor worth their salt can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Getting an indictment.
I've never heard that
Yeah,
saying.
you've never. Oh,
Hey, any
yeah.
prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah, I mean,
it.
it's
know
like
that
it's
was-
not it's not a difficult thing to do. And so, that indictment then leads to a trial. Like this is the stages that happen. This is not a trial of Donald Trump. This is a wow, somebody just dropped a big comment
Yeah,
in
keep
the
going. I'll get to. I'll
whew,
take a
I'm
look.
sorry. I was wow. I
Don't
was
get
just
distracted by the shiny object over there,
I
Rob.
was distracted by that
Yeah, keep
pages and
talking.
pages of text.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. So,
that's all right.
so what
Thank you,
happens at the
Kim
grand
Joe.
jury is the prosecutor has to present before the judge and a jury the evidence that they have. So basically, this is kind of a fail safe to make sure we're not going to waste everybody's time with completely inappropriate, politically motivated, revenge motive, whatever, and trials that just are unnecessary. This is a check and balance on prosecutors to make sure that they're doing their job and they don't waste everybody's time with trials that are unwarranted. The
Mm-hmm.
the level of that needs to be reached is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not what this is about. This is about, is there enough evidence to have that trial to see if he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? So that's what's happening here. Now, to think that this is happening to a former president of the United States is remarkable. I mean, Doug, you've made the point over and over that you don't think that the president will, the former president will be perp walked, and I don't know. This seems really, really significant and leads to frankly, I don't care if he's perp walked or not. All I want is for him to be convicted of a felony. He doesn't need to be, going to jail. He doesn't have to pay a fine. All I want is for him to be convicted of a felony. Because if he's convicted of a felony,
yes,
he is disqualified from running for president of the United States.
Yeah. Look, I would love for him to have faced the consequences of his bad behavior and for that to mean that he can't run for public office. I would also love for him to try to run again and to again be rejected, either in the primaries by the Republicans or by the population of the United States. That would be fantastic. 3 times in a row, having the majority of voters in the country say no to you. Yeah, let's do it. And then in the next election, let's put him on the ballot again and have people vote against him again and vote against him again and again and again. I like that even more than having the judicial system do the public political bidding. But should he be punished for the things that he did in Georgia? Absolutely. Could it even mean that he can't just run in Georgia? This would get interesting, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. If a federal candidate, the only candidate running for federal office that you have to be voted for in multiple states can't run in certain states because he's been determined to not be eligible in that state because of his criminal history. There we go. That feels pretty good. And then he could try to run and try to win without Georgia, something like this, right? All these kinds of things that, again, we don't have a system that allows us to operate this country without people filling the gaps and doing the right thing. And this is what we have to do. I know for a lot of us, we come from a perspective that we want the systems and structures to be just and right. We should work for that all the time. It's never going to match the personal experience and the collective need of a society, however. So we're going to need people to do something more than just have the system work. So we need people to be creative and to step in and to fix problems and to humanize our systems. So we need human morality and ethics and justice, as well as systemic change that makes things work better, because systems can only mold themselves to a certain degree. And after that, people have to engage. And the fact that a grand jury is impaneled to answer the question, was the behavior of Donald Trump something that warrants being prosecuted? That feels like really good work that needs to be done. And I sure hope that they conclude, yes, this man has committed actions that are unacceptable. And there is a response, as insufficient as the response is, to criminal behavior. Almost no one that I know who has had someone violate them, whether then the person's been arrested and punished by the judicial system, or they're in a civil case and there's a ruling about it. Almost never have I known people who have said, "Oh, I'm totally 100% satisfied with that. What came out of that's right. That I feel great. That worked." Mm-hmm. Almost always, even the victims, when there's justice that has been brought, say, I know that's the best we can do, but it didn't fix anything. It didn't correct it. It just still, it lingers. Yeah. That's how most people feel all the time about this stuff. So we have to remind ourselves the judicial system can only do so much. And we need other mechanisms in our society to take the next steps. Yep. And so no matter how this breaks, no matter how this goes, I think that's something that we have to be considering.
Yeah, there's something kind of hilarious, though, of all of the illegal, corrupt, and egregious things that Donald Trump did, from cheating on his taxes to getting rich off the American public to, inciting an insurrection against the United States government. All of the things that he did. A phone call to the Secretary of State of Georgia saying, "Hey, I need you to get me more votes. Get me 11,000 more votes."
Yeah, all I need. I don't need you to make everything right. I just need you to find the votes. We need 11,000, whatever number. He names the number. Like, he's not even saying to them, "Hey, you got a problem over there? Can we send the Justice Department down to help? We just need to make sure this all worked out." He's like, "I don't actually stated it. I don't want you to do that. I just need you to find this number of votes. Can you do that for me?" I mean, this, and you know what else I was reminded of? A little tangent of
everything. It's so innocuous, though. It's like, he did not even know he was breaking the law when he said that. He didn't know. He didn't know.
Okay. I think people told him that he has to stop fussing around, that it's illegal. I think he didn't care. My view of the man is that he's not a criminal, because criminals respect the law and they know they're breaking it. He's lawless. He thinks the laws don't apply to him. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he's criminal, he's like, I don't care. I do criminal stuff all the time. I don't pay people. I cheat on these things. I mean, the man is just a serial cheater and liar, which is what makes the fact that he's saying that he was cheated and lied about, and that's why he lost the election, just so perfectly, the content for a therapy session for him. But I was thinking today that who would have guessed 4 or 5 years ago that Ukraine would have played so many key roles in American society, from the war that's happening there now to Hunter Biden working for a gas company there, to Rudy Giuliani going over there, to Donald Trump calling the president of the Ukraine and saying, "We will send you these particular weapon systems, but I need you to do me a favor first." And that got him impeached. Who knew Ukraine? Talk about your B story in the sitcom. Who knew Ukraine was going to be the place where all this took place and all this happened? It's just really, I don't know. I find it just who would have guessed the things, and that's what this Georgia deal feels like. Yeah, with all the shenanigans. That this is it. The phone call.
Yeah.
And it turns out not just one
but
phone call, multiple phone calls, and not just
yeah,
multiple phone calls, other meetings and calling people to the White House. Like this guy was fussing around in these elections from, Michigan to Arizona to Georgia, all over the place, trying to rectify this situation.
yeah. And Georgia seems like it has become the epicenter of our political happenings, in the same way that you look at Ukraine and go, oh, who would have thought that all these different things. And we've got that here with Georgia, with all these different things, from the John Ossoff running for the for Congress in a special election, and Stacey Abrams, her rise to power and influence, and almost being named vice presidential candidate with Joe Biden, to the Georgia determining control of the Senate, and now Georgia being right here at the forefront of what the future holds for the former disgraced president. And I mean, can I make a little segue here for us, Doug?
Sure.
I mean, all eyes have been on Georgia, but today, really, all eyes are shifting to
Georgia.
Ohio, where there is a primary, and their primary happening. Republicans and Democrats are picking their candidates that will appear on the ballot in November. There are races for governor. Governor DeWine is being challenged by a far right wing guy. He will likely win renomination by the Republican Party pretty handily. The Democrats are picking their candidate. I'm rooting for Nan Whaley, who is the mayor of Dayton, who's running to be the Democratic nominee in Ohio. There is a Senate race. On the Democratic side, Congressman Tim Ryan is running for the nomination. He is being challenged in that race by Morgan Harper, who's an activist from Columbus. Morgan ran for Congress in 2020 and is now running for the Senate. Big fan of Morgan. Love her, but I expect Tim Ryan to probably win that pretty handily. Though Tim Ryan at times has been accused of being squishy on reproductive rights. And so it will be interesting to see if there are political implications of what's happened with the Supreme Court. Could that play out today in Ohio? Could women turn from Tim Ryan and vote for Morgan Harper in the Democratic primary? That's going to be interesting to see. On the Republican side, the Republicans are picking their nominee for the United States Senate. Donald Trump has endorsed J.D. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, and a former self-confessed never Trumper, who became as Trumpy as it gets, and once referred to Donald Trump as America's Hitler, and now has accepted his
full-throatedly accepted his endorsement. Yep.
Well, I would say full-throatedly, except Donald Trump is not quite sure who he's endorsing.
No, I'm saying that J.D. Vance accepted it full-throatedly,
Yes.
And Donald Trump just said yesterday on a fundraiser call for J.D. Vance, I actually support all the Trump supporting candidates. He did. Look, the guy's just who likes me and kind of deal. Yeah. It's going to be interesting if the influence of Donald Trump to bump J.D. Vance over the top works. Now, what I find interesting is that someone like J.D. Vance, who's, wealthy, famous, needs Donald Trump to come in to get him above 24% in the Republican primary. That whatever's going on in Ohio politics, Republicans are split and spread. There's like 5 candidates ranging from 14% in the polling to 25%, which now is where J.D. Vance is. And 4 of the 5 are real pro-Trump people. Only one of them is let's move beyond Donald Trump. The election was not rigged. It's time to, the other kind of Republican. He has a shot. I'm not saying he's going to win, but he's got a shot. He could get close. And if JD Vance doesn't win, and this other one, which Dana, we've got a little video that I shot this morning that we'll show you in a second. One of these other people could win. The subtext, the B story in this sitcom is going to be, oh, Donald Trump's candidate didn't win in Ohio. He doesn't have the level of influence that people think that he does. That could be a big deal. If he's shown to be squishy and people don't really follow him and there's not enough Ohioans, because DeWine, as you mentioned, who's the governor in the primary, is going to win. And he's not a super Trumper guy. Right. No. He's one of these other kinds of Republicans. And
he was one of the first Republicans on the national stage to congratulate Joe Biden on his presidential victory, and got himself on Donald Trump's list as a result of that. But Trump stayed out of that gubernatorial race and hasn't endorsed there. Yeah.
Well, so here's why, because Donald Trump treats politicians the way I treat Minnesota sports teams. I jump on the bandwagon once they're winners. If you get to the championship, I'm going to show up. I'm going to even wave a flag. I'm a bandwagon jumper. Yep. That's the way.
You're not going to waste your time with a losing team, though.
Donald Trump is not going to say, oh, I'm looking at the polling. I can see that DeWine has got 48% of the primary voters, and the next person up is 20 points back. I'm going to try to bump the guy 20 points. No way is he going to do that. That's all that it is. He just looks around and says who looks like they're going to win. And then when someone he picks doesn't look like they're going to win, he just takes his endorsement away and says, no, I only supported them because I thought they were going to win. I don't support people that aren't going to win. I mean, it's just, he's out of the norm of all of this stuff in such a way. But this is a big question, because if it ends up being Ryan as a Democrat, Tim Ryan running against JD Vance, that's going to be a very interesting election in Ohio, which is one of the things we've talked about that could have influence on changing the control of the Senate, because those are the kinds of seats that now JD Vance could be facing that onslaught of suburban women in Ohio who say, no way are we going with this version of Republicanism. And this is where it gets very interesting. I actually think this Mandel guy that we're going to show right now, if he wins the primary,
it's even worse.
Yeah, then I think Tim Ryan it really has a chance to win, because this guy is a real piece of work. Dan, do you think that video is good enough to share? People may have to turn their volume up. Here's how this video came about. I saw this interview on Morning Joe today, and I was so irritated by it. I pulled out my phone and recorded it on my television, which I do a lot. It's like an old man move to make videos. So I'm recording my TV. So the sound's a little. It sounds like exactly what I just described, and you can see the reflection from the windows and stuff on the TV. So it doesn't look great and doesn't sound great, but the content is really great. Yeah, that should be like our theme around here. It should be our slogan. The Common Good Podcast. Doesn't look great, doesn't sound great, but the content, really great.
It's great.
All right, here we go.
We just came from Dayton, and I spoke at a podium, and on the front of the podium, it said Josh Mandel for U.S. Senate, pro-God, pro-gun, pro-Trump. And the reason it said that is because I believe so strongly in the America First agenda that President Trump delivered for my people here in the state of Ohio.
It says Josh Mandel standing next to Ted Cruz. If you've only watched it, only listening, he's standing next to Ted Cruz, who's looking at him. And this doppelganger weird thing with Ted Cruz. What's Ted Cruz doing there? Why doesn't Ted Cruz take his kids to Cancun, where he belongs, right? Why is he not back in Texas solving some sort of a power outage crisis? What's he doing up there in Ohio? But then this Mandel says, who, by the way, I mean, I'm not an ageist here, but this guy just doesn't have the personal affect to look like a United States senator. I mean, he looks very young and just like straight out of the the college Republicans, leadership group. And there's Ted Cruz, like, oh, this guy's really, really something. And Mandel says, the podium that I spoke at said, Josh Mandel, is his name, obviously, pro-God. Okay, just let me pause for a minute as a pastor and say, That's what the notion of blasphemy addresses.
Yep.
Using God as a noun that you can point to and say, oh, I'm all for God. Yeah. You know what a lot of people think about the divine? The divine doesn't need me to be pro-God. I mean, this sort of idea that God and guns and Trump are the trifecta of my Trinity that I stand. I mean, just the blasphemy is unrelenting with these people. But then his thing is pro-God, pro-guns, and pro-Trump. And he's like, oh, why? Because that's a great placard to put on the front. First of all, it's not even yours, apparently. This is what other people are saying about you, maybe, or maybe it's what you've said about yourself. Just so confusing. And to our point here with faith voters and the rise of Christian nationalism, this idea that God, guns, and Trump are the three members of the political messaging trinity that you need, that is where the problem lies.
Yeah. And just to remind everybody, this is the guy that Donald Trump did not endorse.
That's right.
So I don't know, Doug, if you saw, you probably didn't see, a couple months back, there was a Senate debate between Josh Mandel, a Republican who at that point was looking to be, an also-ran, and he was debating Morgan Harper, who is the running on the Democratic side. So it was two candidates from different parties in the midst of a primary debating each other without the presence of everybody else. And it was a fascinating debate to watch because he was as dismissive and rude and awful as you might expect. He called Morgan Harper in the midst of this debate a dumber AOC, and she refused to shake hands with him at the end, and it was something.
He's a troll. Look, he's a political troll.
He needs to be relegated to be a sideshow. Now, that being said, I'm not all that excited about JD Vance either. It's it's quite a choice that these folks in Ohio have.
That's a great point.
Listen, before we wrap up, I just want to mention Kay Ryan asked in the chat, why is nobody covering the Nina Turner part of the Ohio primary? Kay, I was going to get there after we talked about the Senate race. There is there's also a primary happening in the Cleveland area in Cleveland, and it is Nina Turner has a rematch against Congresswoman Brown, who there was an open seat in a special election about 6 months ago. Congresswoman Brown won that against Nina Turner, and now they're going at it again in this in the Democratic primary. I'm a big Nina Turner fan. I love Nina. So I was rooting for her in the special election. I'm rooting for her now. So that's just on the personal side, I love Nina, and hello somebody, and hopefully she'll win the primary today in Cleveland.
Well, all the best. I think a lot of these primaries are going to be evident immediately, and some of them I think are going to take a while. And I could imagine that the Senate primaries are going to be a slow count, especially on the Republican side, and these other ones, probably know by 8:01 Eastern time. So we'll keep everybody updated on all those things. Hey, and Rob, just give us 2 minutes on this little project we have going on Common Good candidates and candidates for the common good, because there's a lot of people, they hear us griping and complaining and seeing the influences of such nonsense in politics. You could get yourself to think, why does anybody run for politics? What's in it for them? In fact, I had a friend, I was talking to this about them the other day, and he said, do they just why do people do this? Why do they run for Senate? And look, I'll tell you, it is not for personal gain as a senator. it might be if you think that being a senator, being a congressperson, you're going to influence the world. But look, every senator and congressperson says the number of things that I promised, the number of things that I got into politics to do compared to the number of things I can actually influence, that difference, it is devastating. Like, you do so little comparatively. And it's not like now, I know to a lot of people, it's a lot of money that you get paid to be a senator. I don't know what it is, $150,000 a year, $170,000 a year, somewhere in that ballpark. You have to work out of state. You have a lot of other costs. You just have a lot. It's not as if these people are becoming the wealthiest people in America. They're not winning the lottery. So what is it that motivates them? And for all of them, I think it's trying to influence the country in the best way that they can, with even marginal amounts of influence. So what motivates these people? Well, we like to wrap ourselves around people who are motivated for the common good, and we're gonna find a little way to cheer them on about that.
Yeah. So, we ask voters to use the common good as their voting criteria instead of just voting for, who's going to give you the biggest tax cut, or, thinking only about yourself. We think this idea of loving your neighbor needs to be taken into the voting booth with us. And we need to think about the common good, and it needs to be our voting criteria. It needs to be the thing that causes us to touch the touch screen in the places that we do. And so what we've done all across the country is we've asked candidates to make a commitment to use the common good as their governing criteria. If voters vote for them, we've asked candidates to say, you know what, I'm gonna use the common good as my governing criteria. It's gonna be the motivating factor for how I govern, whether that is in a state legislative office, or in a governor's office, or in the halls of Congress, or the United States Senate. Up and down the ballot, we have candidates who are saying, you know what, I'm going to use the common good as my governing criteria. So this Candidates for Common Good is, it's not about agreeing to a set of planks in a platform or policy positions. Though, certainly we advocate for a lot of stuff here at Common Good, very clearly. It's more about a shared set of values, and specifically the sense that we need to not just look out for ourselves, but we need to look out for the interests of others. And so we are going to be launching Candidates for Common Good. Hopefully this week. It'll be a page on our website. It'll be on social media. And we're really excited that we have got a bunch of candidates, including some big name folks.
Yeah, some that you recognize, and you have a candidate, head on over there, push them our way. We're going to be spreading all the goodness around.
If you are a candidate or know a candidate who might be interested in it, running for whatever race at all, that would be interested in being a candidate for Common Good, shoot me an email at Rob, it's ROBB at votecommongood.com. And I will show you how you can be in the first round of candidates we're going to be announcing.
So we hope that the common good becomes the driving force. I know most people think that's what they're doing, but once you start to ask someone, is this about political gain or about common good? It kind of starts to open up that conversation a little bit. So we're excited about creating not only for candidates, but also for voters, an entire ecosystem of common goodery that can drive their work.
Yep.
Well, hey, thanks for the conversation today. We'll be back talking about faith tomorrow. We'll be back again on Thursday. Little side note here, if you listened to our business yesterday, you know that we're moving a lot of our effort here over to YouTube as opposed to the Facebook and Twitter places. We're working that out. Go over to YouTube now, Vote Common Good on YouTube. You go to youtube.com/c/Vote Common Good, or just Vote Common Good on YouTube, and subscribe over there. And these live streams are going to start to show up there. And on the other places, we're going to put some shorts, maybe some beginnings, maybe some middles, maybe some ends of the conversation to remind you that we've got a conversation going. But we're moving ourselves into the ecosystem that is YouTube, and we want you to be part of that with us. So come on over there and find your way to the subscribe and follow, and all the same things that you can experience anywhere else you can experience over there. There's just a whole lot of reasons that you can listen to yesterday's conversation if you want to know about that, why we're doing it, including like this conversation that we had just over a year ago with Elizabeth Krauss and Ashley Abercrombie on a common good approach to abortion. You can find that easily over there on our YouTube channel. If you want to find that in our videos on Facebook or on Twitter or on Twitch, it's not designed for that. Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. Yeah. YouTube is. And because we put out so much content on video, it's better for us to be in that ecosystem and then share from there into the other places. But we know a lot of you stay in the chat because it's integrated into Facebook. So we're going to do everything we can to bring you with us. So please head on over there to Facebook or to YouTube and subscribe and turn on the bell. I know a lot of people don't even know how YouTube works, and sometimes it can feel a little, I don't know, like you're not interested in how it works. But if you click the little bell over there, little bell icon, then you get a notification, however you want to get notifications, whether it's an email or pops up on your watch, or I don't know, someone comes to your house and knocks on the door. Some way you get a notification that we're live or that we've posted a video. So it keeps you up to date. So if you like this conversation and some of the other formats, because it just sort of pops up in your world, you can have a Vote Common Good live stream podcast pop up in your world over there on YouTube as well. So thanks for being with us this long. It was a long one today. We hope it was helpful and important. Hey, and just to all the people, so many comments, Tara, Mike, Kay, I'm trying to read these as we go. Jeannie,
Kev Joe Kelly,
Bonnie,
Kev Joe, like keep the dissertations, man.
No, post them, Kev Joe. I disagree with you. Post all you want, Kev Joe. You write us a book, my man, and you put that in the chats there. You write everything. In fact, that little there it is. There's Kev Joe Kelly's. There's one great line in Kev Joe Kelly's thing that I was reading, and I was trying to find a way to get it in. So maybe this is the moment. He says talking about Trump, he says, and Mark Meadows, who was his chief of staff, Mark Meadows has said numerous bad things about Trump, like calling him a tub of lard that never won anything in his life, including a game of golf. He disclosed the information about his medical records and his college records. He gave Trump the nickname the Four Loser, and he said Trump won't rage in fury against him or don't because he's afraid of them. Now all of the above and he goes on and goes on. So, yeah, Kev Joe, anybody, look, you post any comments you want. Don't send them to Rob. He's uninterested in reading more than 3 sentences, but do put them in the chats. Here's why. It helps. People see it. They say you moved, you did an action. The algorithms of the socials, they want more interaction. So when you comment on our YouTube videos, no, it's not true on Facebook, other friends of yours see it, but when you comment on YouTube videos, it actually tells YouTube that there's people that are engaged. So you'll see if you start watching YouTube videos, people will say, hey, leave a comment down below on what kind of thing you're thinking about. There's a reason for that. That's how the system is fed to say that people care about what you're doing. So I don't know. I guess the only advice I would have for you, Kev Joe, chop that up into 5 different comments and then post 5 times, and that makes even more benefit. So, but post galore. Peggy, thank you. I think I already said thanks to Kelly and Jim and all the rest. Mike and Rob and Dan. Dan, do you got a minute to show us that mustache before we go here? Because if you're on the video, I mean, that thing.
I'm moving in a Ted Lasso direction with my whole life,
I mean, it's extraordinary, my friend. It is something worth noticing and talking about. And
my wife was like, "You're not going to go on the air with that mustache, are you?" And I tried to promise her I wouldn't, but the world needs to see.
Here we are.
Oh, if it ever goes away, I'm going to feel that deep sense of regret and loss. It's stunning. All right, friends. Is that good? Anything else?
Great. Let's get out of here.
Hey, I heard this great salutation somebody had the other day at the end of one of these things. They said, hey, take care of yourself. And if you can, take care of someone else too. Isn't that nice?
That's good.
I wish we had a little nice slogan like that.
That's
at the
nice,
end.
but Snoopy needs to be let out.
Snoopy's got to go.
That was our
Well
code
played.
from yesterday. That the
played.
show was going a little too long, and Snoopy the dog needed to pee.
Because a guy put in the chat, "Hey, sorry guys, I gotta go. I gotta let my dog out." And then we found out this dog's name is Snoopy, and so now the rule that hour and 15-minute podcast live stream is enough is that Snoopy's got to go. So, all right, thanks everybody.